With the assassination of Julius Caesar, Rome endured a period of unrest until his adopted son, Octavius, established himself as unchallenged ruler. Known by various names in his lifetime, the heir to Julius Caesar eventually became known as Augustus, the Exalted, in 27 BC when the Senate granted him that title and the legal authority to dominate the religious, civil, and military affairs of the state. In essence, he became the first recognized emperor of Rome. Though physically weak and susceptible to disease, Augustus was a shrewd and brilliant politician who was able to achieve his stature through cold, cunning political calculation. The reign of Augustus produced an expanded Roman Empire with secure boundaries, a reformed system of taxation, improved infrastructure of roads with an official courier system, a standing army, and a small navy. Augustus restored peace after years of civil war. Much of the city of Rome was rebuilt, replacing brick with marble. Augustus established police and firefighting services for the city. With his long and prosperous rule, Augustus made the defunct republic unnecessary and established a model of imperial government that persisted long after his death in 14 AD. After his demise, Augustus was worshipped as a god. A month was assigned his name, August. On September 28, 1936, Edgar Cayce gave a reading for a 76-year-old businessman who was identified as the reincarnation of Augustus. The reading stated that as Augustus, this sole entity had consistently manifested the intent to make for greater conveniences for his fellow man and had promoted the desire within individuals to seek the spiritual source of supply. Throughout his varied past lives, the challenge had always been to overcome the temptation to lord himself over others. Cayce reminded him that his innate selfish motives would be judged according to how he treated others. The reading acknowledged the historic value of this individual's past lives, pointing out an important lifetime in colonial America as Samuel Goldenson, where he participated with Adams, Hamilton, Madison, Franklin, Hancock, and Payne in laying the foundation for a new nation. Prior to the colonial life in America, this sole entity was said to have lived in France during the rule of the Louis, when taxation for the indulgences of the rich and powerful was again an issue. As Simon Daudet, he raised his voice against unfair taxation and persecutions of the common people. With regard to the past life as Emperor of Rome, Cayce acknowledged the great expansions in land and power achieved by Augustus in building the Roman Empire, but noted there was a selfish gratifying of ego in the ruler's motivation. In addition to Augustus, Cayce gave readings for several individuals who were linked to this period in Roman history. A 22-year-old woman was told that she had been in the household of Pargarthus, an aide to Emperor Augustus. When she became aware of the turmoils that arose as the Roman soldiers returned home with their prisoners of conquest and new ideas and tenets that challenged traditional Roman doctrine, she questioned those close to her. Her desire for a clear conscience cost her in terms of relationships and status in that life in a material sense, but she grew in soul development. A 38-year-old businessman was told that he had lived during the reign of Augustus when there was warfare in Alexandria, Egypt. He had been an assistant to an important military leader. From that experience, he carried over into his present life a keen moral sense that allowed him to listen to others and act upon the information in a manner leading to commercial and material success. Cayce cautioned that he must temper his business sense with spiritual prompting. A 37-year-old Jewish singer received a reading in 1935 stating that she had been a Greek dancer and musician when Augustus Caesar entertained the lords and ladies of Rome with feasts and celebrations. In the name Grehan, she both lost and gained in that experience, gaining in creative interpretation, losing in self-indulgence and lustful gratification. Casey observed that she was again in a position to entertain others with her musical talents. The challenge was to use her abilities to awaken within others a creative influence, bringing harmony, peace, and understanding to the hearts and souls of those witnessing her performances. A 51-year-old cartoonist was told that he had been court jester to Augustus. In the name Ramaloyuwen, he was not simply a clown or low entertainer, but a friend, counselor, and companion to Augustus. His role was to keep the ruler in a pleasant frame of mind. He used the opportunity to tell stories of peculiar situations in foreign lands in a colorful and entertaining manner, yet always conveying a point. This experience established abilities that he drew upon in his present life as a cartoonist. Interestingly, this same individual was told that after his incarnation in Rome, he had a past life as Hans Christian Andersen, the famous writer of children's stories. A 41-year-old woman was told that she had been in the household of a counselor to Augustus. In the name Prepontia, she utilized her position to learn about foreign lands, especially Palestine and Persia. From that experience, she carried over into her present life an interest and understanding in astrology, numerology, and the mysteries of nature. Like many from the upper class during Augustus's reign, she was cautioned against the influences of those that usurp authority and turn it to self-aggrandizement. A 40-year-old man was given a reading stating that he had been an administrator in Augustus's government. As Nellius, he was one to whom representatives and agents in foreign lands submitted reports and accountings. He used his position selfishly, which eventually led to hardships for him. In his present life, he was counseled to administer judgments with a spirit of justice, truth, and mercy. A 48-year-old engineer was given a reading describing a past life as Catulibus, one close to those in power in Rome during the reign of Augustus, when there was a great deal of power, pomp, and influence in many lands. Casey observed that although the contributions of Catulibus were not acknowledged by the historians and clerics in their writings of that era, and that his lifetime was not long in terms of years, he was indeed the power behind much of that accomplished during the expansion of Roman influence during that period. His extensive knowledge of the situations in other lands through emissaries and reports was carried over into his present lifetime as the ability to remember and recall information, to work out details and give instructions in a wide variety of fields of activity and service. As with many powerful Romans during the reign of Augustus, this sole entity both gained and lost in its development, gaining when he was able to focus on the greater good, losing when he succumbed to self-indulgence and self-gratification, which were latent tendencies carried over from his Roman experience. A 26-year-old dairy farmer received a life reading in 1941 stating that he had lived during the expansion of the Roman Empire at the time of Augustus. With the name Philo, his heritage was Roman, Greek, and Jewish. His reading provides some insight into the character of Augustus. Casey stated that during the period of imperial growth, Augustus attempted to unify the services for peoples in every land, following the example of Xerxes and Midias. This unification was based on the recognition that although there was an innate ability for each individual to rule his own life and household, for better or worse, this ability was a privilege based on the greater good of society, which in this case was the Roman Empire. The reading for Philo gave him credit for emphasizing the statement, "He that serves Rome the better is the greater Roman of all." Casey stated that Philo lived this sentiment as counselor to the authorities in varied lands within the empire. He oversaw the collection of taxes for the benefit of the empire as was envisioned by Augustus. Philo often met with resistance from some individuals and groups whose ideals were selfish. Yet he held true to his ideal of service for the greater good as interpreted by Augustus. He was a true Roman in the best sense. In terms of reincarnational development, this case provides an interesting aside. In a subsequent life, this entity was a pirate and brother to the infamous John Lafitte. Casey notes that after the great advancement made by Philo, the soul entity fell, by circumstance, into that very slough of despair that it attempted to point a great empire away from. Casey attributed these extremes in character to past lives in Atlantis and the astrological influence of Uranus, both leading to extremes, from a dutiful Roman citizen to pirate of the Caribbean. In 1943, Casey gave a reading for a 10-year-old boy who was a judge during the reign of Augustus. In the name Perlices, he often traveled to carry out Roman justice. Casey observed that as he matured in that experience, he was less inclined to rule on the letter of the law and more in sympathy with the spirit of the law. In his present life, he had a particular interest in the history and customs of peoples of North Africa, Palestine, Syria, and Turkey. In 1943, Casey gave a reading for a 52-year-old Quaker who was an editor. She had a past life in Rome as a man named Malincus, an historian during the rule of Augustus. Her reading noted that this was during the time when Augustus made changes in the relationships of the various groups that had been assimilated into the empire. In terms of soul development, the entity gained in its efforts to educate and inform the varied peoples of the empire. The message was a new interpretation of the positive, constructive ways that the diverse cultural groups in the Roman provinces could work together for the betterment and welfare of all the people of the empire. Thus, unification appears to have been a central theme of Augustus' rule, particularly in the latter years. For this individual, the carryover into her 20th century life was a keen interest in history and the ability to be a statistician, historian, interpreter of records, and the application of such information for the betterment of others.